All right, so it looks like we are online now. Welcome everybody to the first ever CS Dialogue by Corporate Shiksha. Workplace 2020 initiative, as some of you would know, got started way back in September 2013, and Saugat, we are partnered with the United Nations Global Compact India as well as Z Business for some of our other initiatives under Workplace 2020. This is the first of its kind initiative that we thought, let's create a platform where we can connect business leaders across different industry sectors, and through a virtual platform we can connect with audiences across geographies. And happy to share that as of yesterday we had more than 12 locations people had signed up, including Mumbai, Bangalore, Pune, Ahmedabad, Hyderabad, Delhi, and some other locations as well. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing your time and agreeing to be with the inaugural session.
It's a pleasure and honor, Ankur, to be part of this session and working with you in Corporate Shiksha on this endeavor.
Thank you.
I hope that you have many more effective sessions like this going forward.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. That means a great deal for us. And a quick background for Saugat. Saugat has been with Cadence for more than 23 years. He's the Vice President R&D for Cadence Design Systems. Saugat graduated from a very reputed IIT Delhi in electrical engineering. He did his BTech there, and post that he did his master's in business management from FMS Delhi. Saugat, I want to really start the conversation by really asking you. You've been a high performer. You've been with Cadence for more than 2 decades. Today's discussion is around how do we engage employees for high performance. Personally, I would see you as one of the great examples in that. Since you've gone through your journey, would you want to share some things around what kept you really going with Cadence for these 23 years plus time that you spent?
2 things. My ability to create an impact on the business, and second, the people around me. And both of these are interrelated. It is because of the people around me, whether above me or the team that I have been working with, I could create an impact. And once I got visibility into the impact that I created for the business and for the organization, that helped me grow and intensify my engagement. So it was a reciprocal behavior, right? The leadership and organization invested in me and I invested back. And you say it's been 2 decades, but believe me, it's a year at a time.
Really?
And I think that every year I feel I'm extremely motivated to come back here and work with the colleagues that I have and create an impact on the business that's creating such transformation for the society.
Fantastic. So I want to just, before we head ahead, for all of you, I see there are viewers already. You can, if you want to ask any questions to Saugat, you can post that live on our website in the comments section. Go to workplace2020.in/CS dialogue, and in the comments section you can leave your questions, your comments, and we'll be picking up and sharing it with Saugat. You can also tweet your questions by using our hashtag CS dialogue on Twitter, and our team is going to be streaming those questions live, and we'll take Saugat's responses on that as well. Since we discussed about your journey, what are some of the things that you recall? It's good that you're saying 1 year at a time, but 23 years is a really long time. And when I see your journey as you were right after college, a few years of experience. This was a job that you took early on. What are some of the things which come to your mind when I say what motivated you to do this? One is a self-driven, and then could be something from the organization, some of your peers.
Absolutely. It's the organizational culture that I believe is the reason why people stick to an organization, right? It's the strength of the culture that gets the like-minded people to come together. And in my formative years, the first company that I worked for, I had a similar experience with a gentleman called Sam Petroda, who's a phenomenal leader. And I feel that I've been very lucky to have been indoctrinated into the sphere of organizational culture with his leadership. And many of us in the diaspora of CDOT that exist in the industry today. Coming into Cadence, I was again very lucky to have worked with very dynamic CEOs as well as leaders who invested in leadership development. And in my own upbringing inside of Cadence, I saw that the kind of skills that are needed for a leader to be really indoctrinated and to learn and then practice is absolutely key for not only his success, but for the business success. So I believe I have been really lucky to have experienced such a level of organizational engagement, leadership engagement on myself. And I felt that that's critical for continuing to evolve an organization that should be front and center for the entire enterprise and our customers to make an impact. Because by having a strong organizational culture, we should be able to attract the best of talent. And we need the best of talent to create the kind of products that we are held responsible for.
And that leads me to the next thought. You're a business leader, you have direct reports who are leaders, leading large people teams. The disconnect really happens when you are creating your own set of culture within your direct reports. But when this translates into a very large number of people through their teams, that's when usually the disconnect happens. So according to your view, what's really some of the key aspects if as a business leader you were to drive culture which percolates down to the organization, to the last person in the chain? How do you ensure that happens? How do you build that culture?
So first of all, it has to be internalized by a leader that engagement and organizational culture are really business imperatives. And I'll explain why I say that. It is not debatable. It has been well researched that engaged employees are more productive. And since productivity is a business concern, it's the business leader's responsibility, and he should be held accountable for, in making sure that there is a level of engagement within the employee base that continues to increase productivity. So continue to increase the engagement levels. Keep that aside. As I said before, it is usually found that engaged employees are there in organizations that have strong cultures. Put these two together, it is the leadership imperative to create a strong organizational culture. In fact, leadership and organizational culture are two sides of the same coin. It is what the leader pays consistent attention to, what he measures, what he controls. That's what creates culture. How he reacts under critical situations, risks, that's what people observe. Not just his words, his actions. That's what's created culture. So it is important that the leader focuses on leadership development and employee development as key tenets of creating a high-performance culture. Right? And once he does that, he ensures that his direct staff or the organization that he directly engages with understands this. They get indoctrinated, they internalize it. Then he holds that team accountable for translating that beyond. So it is always a dyad between the leader and the employee base that he's directing. And that should scale all the way across the organization. Now, there would be, of course, as the organization grows, situations where this is not really scalable. There will be some dilution just because of the numbers. Right? There would be a manager somewhere, as you said, would create his own personal culture that is not in alignment with what the leader wants to create. And there lies the leadership challenge. How can he detect it as early as possible and either train and skill that manager to be aligned, or else make a change in the organization so that the leader is very clear that this is the culture I want, this is the level of engagement I want, and this is what I want leadership behavior to be, right? And likewise, he should, and we do that all the time, as in the first instance that I meet new employees who come into the organization, I tell them about what values that we stand for and request them to call if there is any digression from that behavior. If there's a manager who is not treating an employee with respect, that's not acceptable. And I hold employees accountable for making sure that that's asserted in the right form so that we are able to take care of it. So if there is in the leadership chain an element that's creating a subculture that's not aligned, it's the organizational leader's responsibility to make sure that alignment occurs, whichever way that he feels fit. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely, fantastic. So you would have a lot of structured formats around, calling that out for employees. You would have multiple ways of doing it. How do you sense that on an ongoing basis if somebody wants to flag it out?
So again, 2 or 3 different aspects of it. Let's call out the mechanics first. There is an online mechanism of employees directly or anonymously sharing what their question is or what their concern is. That's one mechanic. The second, more intense mechanic is that the HR plays a role in making sure that the people are connected to. But what I believe is the most effective is going back to where I started. If the leadership employee dyad is strong enough, then at any point in time, the leader knows whether the employee is engaged.
Sure.
Right? And if there is a manager who is not aligned with the culture, the leader should be able to make out and have a line of sight beyond him to ensure that a particular sub-organization or business unit is not creating the impact or not behaving in alignment with the organizational culture. And he should then work with HR to diagnose, identify who or what is causing it, and address it. Because what I have experienced painfully is oftentimes we identify what this issue is, but if you have not diagnosed it right, and more critically, if you have not acted upon it, this can create big issues that can impact productivity globally. So it needs to be addressed. So line of sight by the leader across the organization, at least one level below, is one very good way of detecting it and taking appropriate action.
So, one question I wanted to ask you was, since last time we had a conversation, you mentioned this is, and like you said now, this is clearly a business agenda. It's not an HR agenda, in itself alone. So what is, as a business leader, what are some of your key expectations from an HR leader? When you look at, and this is very key, right? You're saying productivity, this is business as close as it gets. What are your key expectations from an HR leader and an HR business partner supporting any of your businesses to be doing to ensure that we do all this right?
So first of all, let me say that we've been very lucky that within our organization, we have had a continuously improving levels of engagement, a continuous improvement in management capability of ensuring that there is a strong culture, and a level of engagement that we are able to assess positively, take corrective actions, and continuously evolve the organization in a direction that there is more innovation, there's more impact on business, and we retain talent with, luckily, phenomenally low levels of attrition. Having said that, while it is a business imperative of the organizational leader, the HR is a very close business partner in making this happen. Because HR becomes the process expert, because they bring in the conceptual skills that's required to engage in organizational development activities. Second, I believe that HR has the wherewithal of figuring out what the right best practices are, right? And then adapt it to that specific organization, because it'll be very rare that you can pick up a particular practice and then adopt it as is.
Sure, absolutely.
So it is the HR's mind which really plays in and adapts that best practice into the specific organization so that the culture continues to evolve. And third, HR needs to be very innovative and create new practices that's relevant for that organization. So HR plays a very critical role, and we have had most successes in our organizational development activities when the HR and the business leader together partner to make it happen.
Let's also talk about areas where we need to improve. And it's a hugely debated subject, that when engagements drop, when we don't do that well in the engagements, and people tend to leave organization, and the productivity drops, where is that disconnect which happens from a business leader and HR business partner? Do you see any areas that we can work together in a better way? Do you see in your vast experience some areas that maybe in the past we weren't working that well, and now we've improved?
So I would say that I've been fortunate that we haven't come across a situation that I could share my direct experiences from. We've been lucky to have organizational growth all along. There have been bad times macroeconomically that we have had to weather. We've had industry cycles that we had to work through. But overall, we've been able to retain our best talent and grow beyond. So having said that, it is important that, like any disease of the human body, I consider the organization to be a live organism. It is important to sense a defect early. So it is important to sense. And therefore, engagement surveys, where you are looking around and having formal surveys that look at a questionnaire that goes out to a large employee base and figure out how employees are feeling on a regular basis, not once, not at the whims of the organizational leader, but on a regular basis. Continue to sense the organization, analyze what comes, include the managers in that analysis, so that all of us have a sense of responsibility as manager to do something about that feedback. That's important. So that it's like a regular health checkup that we go through ourselves as our human bodies. The organization needs to have that health check every year. So that's one mechanic that we can definitely use to sense it early. Other than that, I think the HR business partners and the HRs have to be extremely well entrenched in the employee base with ears to the ground to detect situations early and bubble it up the organizational leadership chain, so that one can take actions, that it doesn't create a problem that leads to the situation that you talked about, with people walking out. Because if there's one thing that keeps me up at night, it's tomorrow morning, would my best people be around me? Because I'm nobody without them.
That was going to be one of my questions in the end. But I'll ask you.
You can still ask me again.
I'll ask you something else. I'll give you
a
different angle to it, and I'll see if there is something else which I know is more priority for you or not. When you say, and it's quite interestingly the way you put it, it's like the way I understand is HR is more like a health sensor of an organization. The business partner really is that sensor to give you real-time access of what's the health of the organization in terms of engagement, and becomes a very important feeder for any business leader to take actions based on that data. What are some of the other things that you as a business leader keep a close eye on, which gives you, a sense that is my culture the way it is? Are my people engaged? What are some of the top 4 or 5 things which you keep measuring?
Yeah, I understand your question. So, Ankur, for an organization like us, which is serving the electronic design community, which is creating the Internet of Things, or the latest and greatest gadgets that we use, or the spaceships that go up, it is very important that we continue to look at how much of innovation is happening in-house. So I should be always looking at how much of innovation is the team creating. How many of them are really making it to the market and creating profitable business for Cadence? Because we are a for-profit company, and it isn't that we should be just get enamored by technology, but making sure that that technology creates an impact in the customer, make profits from it. Right? So that entire chain of innovation to money is something that we as leaders have to continuously observe and see whether the organization is doing things right. So that's definitely one indicator. The second indicator, of course, is attrition levels. At no cost should I lose my best people around, but everybody has a significant contribution to make in the organization. So everybody counts. So overall attrition levels is something that I keep an eye on. Every quarter, in fact, every month, I look at the year-to-date attrition levels and see, is there something that I should have done differently to be even better? So that's second. Third, the engagement surveys, as I talked about. These are regular questionnaires that we give out to employees, and we drive pretty high levels of participation in that. Definitely above 80%. We target sometimes above 90% as well. And those are definitely three specific data points that we put our fingers on. And the other, which is softer, is as a leader, every manager, every organizational leader should be sensing his direct organization. And that's a relationship, as I said, it's reciprocal. That is, the leader's job is to lead. So I expect the leader should take the first step in engaging with the employee and expect a reciprocal behavior. And in spite of my reaching out, if I don't see the engagement from the employee, I know something's wrong. And if I'm able to detect it early and have a good conversation with him or that team, I should be able to figure out what needs to happen differently for the team to be more engaged, for the team to be more productive, for the team to be more innovative. Innovation is key for us.
So I'm sure you must have a lot of examples where you were able to detect and things course corrected. What are some of the top issues which, not specifically, generically, that you see in teams which come up? Is that the manager? Are these people issues, or are there development growth opportunities? What do you see as the biggest barrier to disengagement when you recall in your own experience? Are these people issues that my boss is, the interpersonal relationship is not working that well, or are there organizational issues that I'm not getting the right growth opportunity? My peers are ahead of me. What do you sense people? So my question is, what really is key reasons, as your experience says, why people get disengaged?
I think key anchor is communication. I know it's a very mundane and staid answer, but it is. So let me backtrack and say why I said this. I would like to believe that our industry consists of humane, respectable, respectful individuals, well-educated, who want to create an impact for the world around them. So no manager or no individual employee can be bad to create an impact that has a negative impact on the rest of the organization. It's usually I've found the need for communication is less understood, and because as engineers we are trained to be very individualistic in the 4 or 5 years that we spend in engineering school, we end up trying to create a world around us which expects that everything will compute algorithmically. It doesn't happen that way. Right? It doesn't happen that way, because let's recognize, and the early in his career engineer recognizes that communication is key, the more successful he can be, right? Because we always underestimate the need to communicate downward, upward, sideways, which leads to unjustified and undeliberate. I'm not sure deliberate more, but it creates an impression of people which is not fair. So whenever I hear that a manager is not operating right, I really don't blame it on the manager. I believe that the ecosystem needs to provide the right skills to him so that he understands the need for communication, to make sure that the team has the information that they need to be successful, because innovation cannot happen in isolation. Execution cannot happen in isolation. People need the information that they require for being successful and more. So the manager needs to communicate, and the employee needs to communicate as well. So it always boils down to not enough communication, right? So one gets that into one's head, that one needs to communicate, howsoever sensitive the information is, howsoever difficult the information is, there is a need to communicate. And that's where the skills come in. Because as human beings, it is not natural for us to engage in a conversation that's difficult. And that's where the leadership development that I keep talking about comes into play. How do I skill a manager? How do I skill a leader to have difficult conversations with an employee, right? And if that skill is available, phenomenal things can happen. I don't know whether I answered your question.
No, absolutely. I'm just thinking, since you mentioned innovation as really a key, what are some of the, if you can share a few things around Cadence, some of your initiatives that you do to drive innovation as a culture?
Sure. I will come back to your question on innovation, but something that you said reminded me about one other aspect of communication. And that's related. It's technology. Technology today has removed any excuse for a leader not to communicate when he's speaking. Right? There is absolutely no excuse for not communicating, whether it's proximity, time, whatever, right? Access. There is technology available today that even if it's not Ankur and Saugat face-to-face and having a conversation, I can reach out to my employees. Right? So communication is key, and there's no excuse not to do that. Innovation is very critical for success in our industry. And if you're asking how do we do that, it's really the ability to understand the customer comes first. The first step is to understand what the challenges our customer face, right? And once we have a good understanding of that, then as engineers, it is our responsibility to figure out what's the best solution that we can offer that's differentiated from whatever else that our competitor is offering, so that we are able to meet our customer's need in a better way at a cost that he can afford, and he's able to solve that problem effectively. So we need highly skilled people around us, which is why employee development is the second key tenet of a high-performance culture, as I said. One is the leadership development, and we talked at length about that. The second is employee development. In our industry, unless we are continuously skilling ourselves in the latest and greatest technology, we get obsoleted very fast. Right? So continuously offering courses, any opportunities for self-learning sessions, opportunities for making sure that people come together and learn a new technology, get the best of faculty to come in from the IITs or other institutes or in India or abroad and talk to our people. Continuously skilling our employees is absolutely key. And myself is absolutely key for making sure that we are continuously able to innovate to meet our customers' needs. So customer knowledge and employee development. These are two key elements.
In that order.
In that order for innovation to happen. I'm not going to the detailed mechanics, maybe that's not necessary for this course, but those are the two broad items, customer knowledge and employee development.
Absolutely. We have a few HR leaders as well who registered and who are logged on. And I would again suggest if there are questions at this point that you want to ask Saugat, it's a free flow dialogue. You could just send in your questions either on Twitter using our hashtag CS Dialogue, or post them onto our webpage in the comments section, and we just pick it. Interestingly, Saugat, you mentioned about now there is no reason that I can't communicate as a leader. Since technology, you look at this example, we are connecting to a lot of geographies. Forget organizations across. We are connecting. How important it is as a competency today for a leader to be socially and technologically very, very savvy. I'm keen to take the reference of Anand Mahindra, for example. He's one person who we see very active on social media, be it Twitter, be it other platforms. You would see very real-time updates from a business leader at his level. it's amazing how he would be managing it. And then a political example, the world is talking about is Narendra Modi. Uh, so clearly there are multiple cases that if we do well there is great amount of ROI for a business leader and an organization. Do you see that as becoming a very core competency today when you look at people leaders in your teams?
So I would like to say that when that societal transformation is complete, that social media or technology is the primary mode of communicating with employees, that's when it'll become a business imperative for the leader to adopt that technology. Secondly, I do find that leaders who are more savvy in the social media are better accepted by the current generation of young engineers who are coming on board. Having said that, I think there is still no alternative to that direct engagement between a manager and employee. And we shouldn't kid ourselves. That's going to go away anytime soon. And while technology can bring people closer across different geographies, but it better be face to face. Because across all generations, Ankur, I believe that, and more so in the current generation, that every individual is different. So it's really different strokes for different folks, right? So we cannot have the same level or the same kinds of solution to everybody's problems. So unless I know Ankur extremely well, I wouldn't know what's the best solution for Ankur's problem.
Absolutely.
And that requires a direct communication.
You see that the mainstream mode of communication transitioning to technology and social media. Do you see that happening anytime soon, or do you think it's still a far-fetched dream that it becomes a mandatory requirement for any leader?
I think there's still time to go for it to be a mandatory requirement. But definitely, as I said, the leaders who have adopted it have become more popular and more accessible to employees, and that's always a good thing. So there's always be those early adopters, and then there'll be laggards, right? And there will be that entire normal curve.
Absolutely. And some of our research that we found out as an employer brand, significant majority of HR leaders responded to our survey saying it's the leader's capability to create an employer brand. Resonates exactly what you were saying. And they also mentioned that if the leader is driving an open communication through social media or face-to-face, rather complementing both, then that's one of the key reasons when you create an employer brand, become an employer of choice for this newcomer young generation entering workforce now. So if you do that, the business case is that your cost of hire, if you are an employer of choice, goes down a little over 50%. So there's a massive cost saving that an organization enjoys. So for example, an organization like Google, who could be an inspirational brand, most people would want to work for that brand, yet alone, would enjoy great cost saving in terms of attracting the top talent. So from that point of view, how do you see Cadence in the very niche talent that you work in? This is a very different kind of talent that you work with, highly high tech and R&D specific talent. How do you see Cadence initiative in creating an employee brand in your own space?
So our employees are our best ambassadors. I've always believed that, and will continue to believe so. Having said that, I agree with you that the social media and the electronic presence is a very critical element of brand building, whether it's of a product or an organization. So let's not run away from it. That's table stakes. We have to have a social presence. We have to have the electronic media presence for us as a brand to exist today. So that's a critical requirement, right? That's not going away. But the fundamentals are still the same. The brand is created through the stories.
Absolutely.
Those stories have to exist, and they have to be authentic.
Absolutely.
Brand has to be the brand attribute has to be validated with actual employees supporting what the organization is saying, right? And so our employees, existing and past,
correct,
are our best ambassadors.
Correct. Stories is a very important point. If you are doing well, but you can't storify the successes which exist internally, then you miss out on the overall brand.
So the fundamentals do not change, the expression has changed, and we better adapt to what's the latest in that, and that's why the web presence and the electronic presence is absolutely critical. But that's the expression of it. What's underlying it is the culture, the stories, the artifacts.
And I've been following Cadence on social media. I see Cadence as an organization leveraging it really well. We see the latest updates, some events, lots actually happen. And as an outsider, you can get access through social media.
Absolutely.
Do we have any questions at this moment? Okay, so one thing I wanted to also touch upon, since we are also discussing about young people, even in the technology space, I'm not sure in the EDA space that Cadence would really be focusing on. But overall, if you see the macro picture, there are millions of people entering workplace every year. India is riding on that demographic, which can be a dividend. Those of the people who enter workplace, the young people, some of them who we work with in our career launchpad program, which is for campuses, we see the initial years as the biggest challenge. So some of them, and this is from an external research that we picked up, which was done a few years back, it mentions that more than 75% of people from the top business schools left their campus placement jobs within the first 8 months. So there was a very big expectation mismatch in terms of what they were looking at and what the organization could do to engage them. One role we discussed already of how as an organization we could do it. Do you have any tips for the youngsters entering now? I personally feel it's more an individual responsibility to engage yourself than an organization alone. What some of the tips or suggestions you would have for people entering now to be highly engaged, to be motivated, and do well in their career?
First of all, even before one joins the organization, one should research the organization extremely well to find whether one's aspiration is aligned with what the organization stands for. Not just what's present in its web, not just what its products stand for, but to talk to as many people as possible. That individual employees should be interviewing the organization just as much the organization interviews the employee. So after having done that research, once the candidate becomes an employee, I would really go back to my own experience and say that there is no substitute for individual initiative. There is absolutely no substitute for individual initiative. And so leadership is all about look for a gap, look for a space, and fill that in. Nature abhors vacuum. So find where you can create a value over and beyond what your assigned role is, and step in. You can always beg for forgiveness later if you stepped on somebody else's toes. But nature abhors vacuum. Leadership is all about filling that up. So look for opportunities and learn and contribute. So do not always wait for the organization to take the first step. Go ahead and engage. 9 times out of 10, you'll find a reciprocal behavior from leadership, because leadership is all about identifying talent. And should there be a person demonstrating that initiative, I, for one, would go and work with that individual even when he's fresh from college, right? Because that's talent that I need.
Fantastic.
Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. So, do we have any questions as of now? Okay.
Looks like we have a quiet audience.
So, I think a lot of questions I've had the liberty of asking you. Um, I think pretty much we've sort of covered the whole gamut which comes to mind. Towards the end of this, and we have a hard stop at 4, which is just about 18 minutes from now. I want to ask you, as a overall overarching vision, if we were to put across for creating high performance culture across organization, as a business leader, what would be those? Uh, and this is not Cadence specific. If I were to just take your views on what are those 4 5 tenets we as HR managers, because there are a lot of HR managers listening into this conversation, we need to drive to ensure that we create a high performance culture. What are those 4 5 tenets that we need to look at? Some of that we discussed, but if we were to just summarize and look at top 5 tenets to drive this high performance culture, what would that be?
So, first of all, as an HR leader, I expect that you would have a relationship with the business leader that you can challenge that person if you think it's not right for the organization, that he's not doing something else. That's required. So that relationship is important because that's the value that the HR manager brings, the HR leader brings to the organization. So let's take that as table stakes. I will not tire of repeating the 2 fundamental tenets of high performance culture, which is leadership development and employee development. Having said that, it is important that it is not only in good times, but in bad times as well, the leadership stays focused on these 2 tenets, because people observe behaviors for consistency across good times and bad times as well. So just because there's an economic downturn, you just stop all training and stop all employee development. That's not being very smart, right? Yeah, you can spend less, but find innovative ways of making sure that employees continue to renew themselves. And similarly with leaders. So those are 2 fundamental tenets. Now let's come down to the specific values in the organization that we expect that talented employees would look for. One is excellence in execution, right? Whether it's for the HR manager in how he performs all the people initiatives across the organization, or whether it's in the main line of business itself. Excellence in execution is absolutely key, right? Because without excellence in execution, we couldn't be doing any innovation, because I can have the best of ideas, but if I cannot bring them to bear for the success of a customer, it's of no value, because I have to be profitable as well. So excellence in execution is a foundation. And the other foundation, of course, is respect for people, right? And this is, I know it's very easy to say it, words are cheap, but it comes to test when times are bad, when there's a macroeconomic situation where there's stress going on across the industry and across the organization, when there is feedback to be given to an employee which is not exactly very positive. Those are the situations when values such as respect for people gets tested. And that's a foundation on which we need to build manager and leadership behavior. Right? So excellence, execution, and respect for people. These are 2 fundamental tenets. Anything that you have in mind, Ankur, that you came across for Cadence that you feel that I should expand on?
I think innovation is what you touched on. Rather it would fall under execution excellence, but for what you shared, it sounded much larger than only on an everyday aspect. I saw innovation as a very strong focus that you have in Cadence.
It is. As I said, that's the business imperative for the industry that we are in. And the reason I talked about respect for people and excellence in execution as the foundational values is that without that, we wouldn't stand a chance to innovate. But with those fundamentals being there, leadership development, employee development, respect for people, and excellence in execution, innovation is what we have to do for staying in business, right? Because we are in a very competitive industry, and we serve customers who are household names, and they don't expect anything but the best from us, and so we have to be continuously innovating. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we have 5 points from Saugat on how to build a high performance culture now. It's clearly, and I think the first point that you mentioned has real value. Uh, Others are absolutely fundamental. We need to get them, but I think the relationship is where really one needs to really work on more, the way I see it. And one personal attribute which drives relationship is the personal credibility. A leader, be it business or HR leader, that drives. If you are credible, like you mentioned, how well have you acted in a difficult time?
Yes.
How well you were able to do that difficult conversation,
Yes.
which was needed,
Yeah.
would define those relationships that you
Mhm.
build. So fantastic point, I think. Great conversation, and I think if we don't have questions, we are going to close. But let's just look at one last time. If you have any questions for Saugat, you could send in your questions on Twitter using CS Dialogue as our hashtag. You could also come onto the website and post your questions in the comment section. This conversation is also being recorded, and it will be available for you to view post the session as an on-demand session for later viewing. And I'm just going to give it a few minutes. Let's see if we get a few questions.
Okay.
Else we will call it a close. And then I have one last question before we close that. Yeah. Do we have any questions on Twitter? Okay, so we have a quite a audience, as he said. Um, Saugat, you mentioned about sleepless nights and whether you're going to retain the best of your people. That's the biggest concern that keeps you awake at night. I want to flip that question a little bit, and I've asked this question to many CEOs who have interacted earlier, and I say when you equate that to bottom line of your business, profits, and the real numbers, do you look at that as really the number one, or is that people? What is the sequence? Both are important, no doubt about it. You need to make money as a business, and you need to ensure that you have people to deliver that business. What is that which comes first? Is that people, or is that the numbers?
People. And the reason is very simple. That we are in, I'll not be able to deliver anything. I'll not be able to create any product. I'll not be able to satisfy any customer without the best people around me. And it takes years of an individual's investment to learn the domain, to learn the customer, to learn the technology, to be able to create uh, new innovative products that make a difference. And it is not possible to replace that in any reasonable time frame. And therefore, it is a business imperative that I focus on people. And I know from experience that once I do that, it translates into profitable business. Now, there is no mathematical model that I can share with you to prove that, but it is my anecdotal evidence, which over the years have proven to me that I need to, and through my people, I stay focused on the customers. And that's how we create a relation. Profitability comes because of high productivity from employees. And as I said right in the beginning, productivity comes from engaged employees. So you see the circle looping back, right? You will be profitable if we have more productive employees. The productive employees will be there if you have an engaged employee base. And therefore, as a leader, my job and the manager's job is to make sure that we stay engaged.
Fantastic. So that's really insight, and thanks once again for sharing your perspective and insights with us. Like all good things, this also has to come to an end. But I'm happy to share that this is going to be an ongoing series that Corporate Shiksha will run on a monthly basis to begin with. So we'll be back for our second edition, and you heard it. It's clear that employee engagement is a business imperative. It's the one of the top agendas of a business leader, like Saugat mentioned. And clear takeaways are, we need to look at leadership development and employee development as two separate focuses. In that order, we might be clubbing it as of now only as an overall event specific or an R&R activity as employee engagement. It's not that alone. That would also be a part of it. But we really need to look at how are we getting people to engage with difficult conversations. How are we engaging in the leadership development angle that an organization needs for delivering high performance culture, which translates into business. So, from the entire team of Corporate Shiksha, I want to thank Saugat for being with us. Despite your busy schedule, I'm aware of your travel plans. Thank you so much for still accommodating this request. And up till next time, we call this as a close, but keep coming back to workplace2020.in/CS dialogue, and we will very soon post details for our next session, which is going to be with, again, a very well known and respected industry leader. Thank you, Saugat.
Thanks, Ankur, for the opportunity, and thanks to Corporate Shiksha. And thank you all for bearing with me.
Thank you so much. So now officially we call this session a close. Up till next time, have a good one.